The early evening sun filters through the blinds, casting long, golden shadows across our living room. I sit on the edge of the couch, absently swirling the glass of whiskey in my hand, the amber liquid catching the last rays of daylight. The room feels too quiet, too still, as if the house itself is holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I take another sip, savoring the warmth that spreads through my chest, though it does little to quell the unease gnawing at the edges of my mind. Across from me, the clock ticks steadily. It's almost 8 p.m. She should be back by now. A soft buzz from my phone on the coffee table jolts me from my thoughts. I pick it up and glance at the screen. A text from my wife, Sarah, running late. Don't wait up. The message is short, almost curt, and doesn't do much to alleviate the tension that's been building since she left for her high school reunion earlier today. I can't help the frown that tugs at my lips. This whole thing has felt off from the start. Sarah isn't one to dwell on the past. She rarely talks about her high school days, brushing off any mention of them with a dismissive wave or a change of subject. So when she told me about the reunion, claiming she was looking forward to reconnecting with old friends, I was surprised. The explanation was casual, almost too casual, and it planted a seed of doubt in my mind. But I pushed it aside, chalking it up to my own insecurities. After all, we'd been married for 10 years, and I had no reason not to trust her. Also, I thought. Another sip of whiskey. I check the time again. 8:15 p.m. I toss my phone onto the couch beside me, leaning back and letting my eyes drift shut. I try to convince myself that there's nothing to worry about, that she's just having a good time catching up with old friends. But the seed of doubt has already taken root, its tendrils wrapping around my thoughts and squeezing tight. My mind drifts back to the morning when she was getting ready. She'd spent an unusually long time in front of the mirror, fussing over her appearance. It wasn't like her. Sarah was always effortlessly beautiful, the kind of woman who could throw on a pair of jeans and a t-shirt and look stunning. But today, she'd worn a dress I hadn't seen in years, a deep red number that hugged her curves and brought out the rich auburn of her hair. She'd looked different. Confident. Sexy. "Are you sure you're okay with this?" she'd asked, glancing at me through the mirror as she applied a final coat of lipstick. Of course, I'd replied, though something in my voice had faltered. She'd caught it, pausing to give me a long, searching look. But then she'd smiled, a bright, reassuring smile, and leaned in to kiss me. "I'll be back before you know it," she'd said softly against my lips. Now, hours later, that kiss feels like a lifetime ago. The clock ticks louder, its rhythm matching the quickening beat of my heart. The front door creaks open, and I sit up, my pulse spiking. Sarah steps inside, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. She looks radiant, flushed with a kind of energy that I don't recognize. But there's something else, too, something almost secretive. Her eyes flicker to me, and for a brief moment, there's a shadow of something unreadable in her gaze. Guilt? Fear? I can't tell. "How was it?" I ask, keeping my tone light as I rise to meet her. She pauses, her hand lingering on the doorknob for just a fraction too long before she closes it behind her. "It was nice. Good to see everyone." "Everyone?" I probe, studying her face for any sign of hesitation. She nods, but there's a tightness around her mouth that wasn't there before. "Yeah. Most of the old gang was there." I want to believe her. I want to brush off the tension in the air as nothing more than my imagination running wild. But as she steps past me, I catch a whiff of cologne that isn't mine, mingling with her perfume. It's subtle, almost undetectable, but it's there, a scent that raises the hairs on the back of my neck. I reach out, gently touching her arm. "You sure everything's okay?" She turns to me, her smile a little too quick, a little too forced. Of course, why wouldn't it be? Before I can respond, she slips out of my grasp and heads toward the bedroom. I watch her go, my stomach churning with unease. Something is wrong. I can feel it in the pit of my gut, a deep, gnawing certainty that something happened tonight, something she's not telling me. I don't sleep much that night. Every time I close my eyes, I see her in that red dress, laughing with old friends, dancing to music that only exists in the past. And then I see something else, something darker, her in the arms of another man, his hands on her body, his lips on her skin. The thought makes my chest tighten with a mix of anger and fear. Morning comes too soon, bringing with it a sense of dread that I can't shake. Sarah is already up, moving around the kitchen with an energy that feels forced. She hums to herself as she makes coffee, but there's a tension in her movements, a stiffness that wasn't there before. I decide to test the waters, to see if I can get her to talk. You never told me who you saw last night. She hesitates, just for a moment, before responding. Oh, you know, the usual. A few old classmates, some teachers. Nothing too exciting. My fingers drum against the table, the sound sharp and staccato in the quiet room. Anyone special? Her head snaps up, her eyes locking onto mine. There's a flicker of something, panic, before she quickly masks it with a laugh. Special? No, just the same old faces. I nod, pretending to accept her answer, but inside, the doubt is growing, spreading like a poison. I can't ignore it anymore. I have to know the truth. Later that day, when she's out running errands, I find myself drawn to her laptop, the one she always keeps with her, the one she's never let me touch. I hesitate for only a moment before opening it, my fingers trembling as I navigate through her files. It doesn't take long to find what I'm looking for: an email, buried deep in her inbox, from a name I don't recognize. I click it open, my heart pounding in my chest. Sarah, I can't wait to see you tonight. It's been too long. Remember the good old days? I'll be waiting for you, same place as always. The words blur as tears sting my eyes. I stare at the screen, the truth hitting me like a punch to the gut. She met someone last night, someone from her past, someone she once loved. I close the laptop, my mind racing, trying to process what I've just discovered. My hands shake as I reach for my phone, instinctively opening the browser. I don't know what I'm searching for: proof, maybe, or a way to confront her without losing my mind. But what I find instead leaves me cold, my breath catching in my throat. A video, uploaded just a few hours ago, titled High School Reunion Scandal. My fingers hover over the screen, hesitation battling with a sickening curiosity. And then, with a trembling hand, I press play. The video is grainy, filmed on a phone, but there's no mistaking the figures on the screen. It's Sarah, her dress hiked up, her hair a wild mess, and she's not alone. They're in a classroom, the kind with old wooden desks, and they're laughing, touching, their bodies too close, too familiar. I watch in horrified silence as they collapse onto a desk, their laughter turning into something else, something primal, something that makes my blood boil. My wife is cheating on me. The reality of it crashes over me like a tidal wave, dragging me under. And as I stare at the screen, at the woman I thought I knew, something inside me snaps. The chapter ends with a chilling resolve forming in my mind. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. The video is still playing on my phone, but I can't bear to watch it any longer. My thumb hovers over the screen before I finally hit the pause button, silencing the hollow laughter that echoes in my mind. I stare at the frozen image, my heart pounding in my chest. A million thoughts race through my head, each one more frantic than the last. I need answers. I need to know who this man is. I need to confront Sarah. But first, I need help. I grab my phone and scroll through my contacts until I find the number I'm looking for. My fingers tremble as I press the call button. It rings twice before a familiar voice answers. Hello? David, I say, trying to keep my voice steady. I need to talk to you. It's important. There's a pause on the other end of the line, and I can almost picture David's brow furrowing in concern. What's going on, Mark? You sound off. I can't explain over the phone. Can you meet me at the Rusty Nail in half an hour? David hesitates for a moment before responding. Yeah, sure. I'll be there. I hang up without another word, my mind already spinning with what I'm going to say. David has been my best friend since college. If there's anyone I can trust to help me navigate this nightmare, it's him. I grab my keys and head for the door, glancing around the house as I do. It feels different now, as if the walls themselves are hiding secrets I've only just begun to uncover. I slam the door behind me and make my way to my car, the anger building with each step. I'm going to get to the bottom of this if it's the last thing I do. The Rusty Nail is a dive bar on the edge of town, the kind of place where the lights are always dim and the beer is always cheap. It's where David and I go when we need to unwind, to escape from the pressures of work and life. Tonight, though, it's anything but a refuge. I push through the door and scan the room, my eyes landing on David almost immediately. He's seated at a booth in the back, nursing a beer and watching the door. When he sees me, he waves me over with a concerned expression. "Mark, what's going on?" he asks as I slide into the booth across from him. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I take a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "It's Sarah," I finally say, my voice hoarse. She's cheating on me, David." David's eyes widen in shock. "What? Are you sure?" I nod, pulling out my phone and handing it to him. "Look for yourself. I found this video online. It's her, David. There's no mistaking it." David hesitates before taking the phone from me, his expression darkening as he watches the video. When he's done, he sets the phone down on the table, his jaw clenched. "Jesus, Mark. I'm so sorry. This is bad." I don't know what to do, I admit, my voice cracking under the weight of my emotions. I feel like I'm losing my mind. She's been acting strange ever since she mentioned that reunion, and now this. David runs a hand through his hair, leaning back in his seat. "Have you confronted her about it?" "Not yet," I say, shaking my head. I didn't know how. I needed to talk to someone first. I needed advice. David nods, his mind clearly working through the situation. "Okay, first things first. You need to figure out who this guy is. If you can identify him, maybe you can get some leverage. Do you recognize him at all?" I think back to the video, trying to focus on the man's face, but it's difficult. The footage is grainy, and the angle is bad. "No," I admit. I can't make him out. But Sarah knows him. That much is clear. "All right," David says, tapping his fingers on the table as he thinks. "Do you know anyone who went to that reunion? Maybe they can give you some intel." I shake my head. Sarah didn't mention any names. She was vague about the whole thing. David frowns, his eyes narrowing as he considers our options. "What about her social media? Have you checked her accounts? Sometimes people slip up and leave clues without realizing it." I hadn't even thought of that. "No, I haven't. I've never had a reason to check before." "Let's start there," David suggests. "If we can find out who she was hanging out with at the reunion, maybe we can trace it back to this guy." I nod, grateful to have a plan, even if it's a flimsy one. "Okay. Let's do it." David pulls out his laptop from his bag, he's always prepared, one of the things that makes him such a good lawyer, and boots it up. I sit beside him, anxiety gnawing at my insides as he logs into my wife's social media accounts. He's faster than me with these things, more experienced in looking for hidden connections. "Here we go," he mutters, scanning through Sarah's recent activity. Nothing out of the ordinary at first glance, but wait a minute. Look at this. He turns the screen toward me, and I see a photo Sarah posted just a few days ago. It's a group shot from the reunion, taken at a local bar. There are about 10 people in the photo, including Sarah, all smiling and looking like they're having a great time. But my eyes are drawn to one man in particular, a man standing close to Sarah, his hand resting on her lower back. He's tall, with dark hair and a confident smile. I don't recognize him, but there's something about the way he's looking at her that sets my teeth on edge. That's him, I say, my voice barely above a whisper. I know it. David nods grimly. I think you're right. Now we just need to figure out who he is. We spend the next hour combing through the profiles of everyone tagged in the photo, trying to find a match. It's slow going, and the tension between us is palpable, but finally, we get a hit. Here, David says, pointing to a profile. Richard Jacobs. He's a real estate developer, based out of Chicago. Looks like he and Sarah were close in high school. There are a few old photos of them together. My blood runs cold as I look at the profile. Richard Jacobs. The name sounds vaguely familiar, like something Sarah might have mentioned in passing years ago, back when we were still getting to know each other. This is him, I say, my voice filled with a mix of anger and despair. This is the guy she's been seeing. David closes the laptop, looking at me with a seriousness that sends a shiver down my spine. So what's your next move, Mark? You've got the proof. You know who he is. Are you going to confront her? I lean back in my seat, running a hand over my face. The anger inside me is boiling over, but there's a part of me that's still in shock, still trying to process everything that's happened in the last 24 hours. I don't know, I admit, my voice shaky. Part of me wants to confront her, to scream at her for what she's done. But another part of me, I don't know if I can even look at her right now. David places a hand on my shoulder, his grip firm. Whatever you decide, just know that I've got your back. We'll figure this out together. I nod, grateful for his support, but the knot of dread in my stomach only tightens. This isn't over, not by a long shot. And as I sit there, staring blankly at the bar's faded wallpaper, a dark resolve begins to take shape in my mind. I'm going to make sure Sarah regrets every moment of her betrayal. She's going to pay for what she's done, and I'm going to make damn sure that Richard Jacobs pays too. But first, I need to plan my next move. I need to be smart about this. And most importantly, I need to keep my emotions in check. If I'm going to get my revenge, I need to be calm, collected, and utterly ruthless. As David and I leave the bar, the night air feels cool against my skin, a stark contrast to the fire burning in my chest. I've made my decision. I'm going to confront Sarah, but not tonight. Tonight, I'm going to watch, to wait, to gather every piece of information I can. And when the time is right, I'm going to strike. And when I do, there will be no going back. The next morning dawns grey and cold, the sky heavy with clouds that threaten rain. It feels like the world is mirroring the storm brewing inside me. I didn't sleep much after leaving the Rusty Nail last night, and when I did, my dreams were filled with images of Sarah and Richard, their laughter echoing in my mind like a cruel taunt. But today, there will be no running, no hiding. Today, I will confront her. I'm sitting at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee that's long gone cold, when Sarah finally walks in. She's dressed in a simple sweater and jeans, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. She looks the same as she always does, beautiful, calm, the perfect image of the woman I thought I knew. But now, every time I look at her, I see that video playing in my mind, the betrayal clear as day. Morning, she says, her voice light as she pours herself a cup of coffee. You're up early. I don't respond right away, my eyes fixed on the steam rising from my mug. Finally, I force myself to speak, my voice coming out colder than I intended. Yeah. Couldn't sleep. She looks at me, a hint of concern in her eyes. Is everything okay? You seem off. I can't help the bitter laugh that escapes my lips. Funny, I was going to ask you the same thing. Her brow furrows in confusion. What do you mean? I set my mug down with a little more force than necessary, the sound echoing in the quiet kitchen. I mean, you've been acting strange ever since that reunion. And now I think I know why. The color drains from her face, and for a moment, she looks genuinely alarmed. But she quickly recovers, a forced smile tugging at her lips. Mark, I don't know what you're talking about. You're imagining things. I lean back in my chair, crossing my arms over my chest as I study her. Am I? Or is there something you're not telling me? Something about a certain Richard Jacobs? The name hits her like a punch, and she visibly flinches, her eyes widening in shock. She opens her mouth to respond, but no words come out. The guilt in her eyes is unmistakable, and it's all the confirmation I need. Don't bother lying, Sarah, I say, my voice laced with anger. I saw the video. I know what you did. Her face crumples, and she looks away, unable to meet my gaze. Mark. I'm so sorry. Sorry? I echo, incredulous. You're sorry? You betrayed me, Sarah. You lied to me, and then you had the audacity to act like nothing was wrong. Tears well up in her eyes, but I'm too angry to care. She reaches out a hand as if to touch me, but I pull back, shaking my head. Don't, I warn, my voice dangerously low. Don't you dare try to comfort me. You lost that right the moment you decided to sleep with another man. She drops her hand, her shoulders slumping in defeat. I never wanted to hurt you, Mark. It just happened. I laugh again, the sound bitter and hollow. It just happened? That's your excuse? Do you even realize how pathetic that sounds? She bites her lip, the tears now spilling down her cheeks. I know it sounds terrible, but it's the truth. I didn't plan for this to happen. I ran into Richard at the reunion, and I don't know. We started talking, reminiscing about old times, and one thing led to another. Her words trail off, and I can see the shame in her eyes. But it does nothing to quell the rage boiling inside me. I push my chair back and stand, pacing the kitchen as I try to get a handle on my emotions. Do you love him? I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. She doesn't answer right away, and the silence feels like a knife twisting in my gut. Finally, she shakes her head. No, Mark. I don't love him. It was a mistake, a stupid, selfish mistake. Her words hang in the air, but they do little to soothe the ache in my chest. A mistake, I repeat, more to myself than to her. You made a mistake, and now everything we've built, everything we've been through together, is ruined. I don't want to lose you, she says, her voice cracking. Please, Mark. We can work through this. We can go to counseling, we can. No, I cut her off, my tone final. There's no coming back from this, Sarah. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. She looks at me, desperation written all over her face. Mark, please. We can fix this. I'll do anything. I said no. I shout, the force of my anger startling even myself. I can't even look at you right now. I need you to leave. Go stay with a friend or something. I need space. Her face crumples, and for a moment, I think she's going to argue. But then she nods, defeated. Okay. I'll go. She turns and walks out of the kitchen, her footsteps heavy on the stairs. I hear her moving around upstairs, packing a bag, and the sound only intensifies the rage simmering beneath my skin. I want to scream, to break something, to do anything to release the pent-up fury that's threatening to consume me. But instead, I stand there, rooted to the spot, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts at once. After what feels like an eternity, Sarah comes back downstairs, a small suitcase in hand. She hesitates at the doorway, her eyes red and swollen from crying. Mark, she begins, her voice trembling. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But I love you. I don't want to lose you. Please, just think about everything before you make any decisions. I say nothing, my expression cold and unreadable. She waits for a response, but when none comes, she nods again, defeated, and walks out the door. The silence that follows is deafening. I stand in the middle of the kitchen, staring at the spot where she stood just moments ago, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Part of me feels a sick sense of satisfaction. Sarah is out of the house, and I finally have the space I so desperately needed. But another part of me, a part that I'm not quite ready to acknowledge, feels an overwhelming sense of loss. I sink back into my chair, my head in my hands, trying to make sense of everything. My marriage is in shambles, and the woman I thought I would spend the rest of my life with has betrayed me in the worst possible way. And now, I'm left with nothing but the bitter taste of anger and regret. Hours pass, but time seems to stand still. The house is eerily quiet, every creak and groan of the old wooden floorboards amplified in the silence. My mind drifts back to Richard Jacobs, the man who has unwittingly become the focal point of my rage. I don't know him, but I despise him with every fiber of my being. He's the one who turned my wife's head, who lured her away from me, who made her forget everything we've been through together. The thought makes my blood boil, and I realize that this isn't just about Sarah anymore. Richard Jacobs has taken something from me, and I intend to take it back. I need to confront him, to look him in the eye and make him understand the gravity of what he's done. I reach for my phone and pull up the information David and I found last night. Richard's business address is listed, a swanky office in downtown Chicago. I don't think twice before grabbing my keys and heading for the door. The anger inside me is like a live wire, propelling me forward with a single-minded determination. The drive to Chicago is a blur, the city skyline looming in the distance as I speed down the highway. My hands grip the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turn white, but I can't bring myself to loosen my hold. The only thing I can think about is confronting Richard, making him understand that there are consequences for what he's done. I arrive at his office building, a sleek glass structure that reflects the cloudy sky above. I park my car and walk inside, my heart pounding in my chest. The receptionist greets me with a practiced smile, but I barely register her presence as I make my way to the elevator. I know I'm being reckless, that I should have a plan, but right now, all I can think about is facing the man who has turned my life upside down. The elevator ride feels interminable, the soft hum of the machinery doing nothing to calm the storm raging inside me. When the doors finally slide open, I step out into a plush hallway, the carpet muffling my footsteps as I make my way toward Richard's office. His door is slightly ajar, and I can hear the low murmur of his voice as he talks on the phone. I hesitate for a moment, my hand hovering over the doorknob as I gather my thoughts. But then the anger surges up again, and I push the door open without knocking. Richard looks up, startled, as I burst into his office. He's sitting behind a large mahogany desk, a sleek phone pressed to his ear. He's exactly as I remembered from the photo, tall, well-groomed, with an air of confidence that borders on arrogance. He's the kind of man who's used to getting what he wants, and right now, the sight of him makes me sick. "Who the hell are you?" he demands, his voice sharp as he sets the phone down. "This is a private office. You can't just barge in here." I take a step forward, my fists clenched at my sides. "My name is Mark," I say, my voice low and menacing. "I'm Sarah's husband." Recognition flashes in his eyes, followed by a flicker of something that might be fear. He opens his mouth to speak, but I cut him off, the rage finally spilling over. "You had an affair with my wife," I hiss, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. "You destroyed my marriage, and now you're going to pay for it." Richard rises from his chair, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Look, I didn't know she was married. She never mentioned you." "Bullshit!" I shout, taking another step closer. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You didn't care that she was married because you only think about yourself." He takes a step back, his eyes darting to the door as if he's considering making a run for it. "Mark, listen. I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean for this to happen." "Sorry?" I spit, the word like poison on my tongue. "Sorry doesn't cut it. You're going to regret ever laying a hand on my wife." Before he can react, I lunge at him, my fists connecting with his chest as I shove him against the wall. The force of the impact knocks the breath out of him, and for a moment, he looks genuinely terrified. But then he regains his composure, his eyes narrowing as he pushes back. "Get off me," he snarls, shoving me away. "You're crazy." "Maybe I am," I growl, advancing on him again. But I'm not leaving here until you understand what you've done. He raises his hands defensively, but I don't stop. My fist connects with his jaw, the impact sending a jolt of satisfaction through me as he stumbles back. I'm on him in an instant, grabbing the collar of his expensive shirt and dragging him toward me. You ruined my life, I seethe, my voice thick with emotion. And now I'm going to ruin yours. Richard struggles against me, but I'm too far gone to care. All the anger, all the pain I've been holding inside pours out as I slam him against the wall again and again, each impact a release of the fury that's been building since I first saw that video. Stop, he gasps, his voice panicked as he tries to push me away. Please, just stop. But I can't stop. Not until he feels a fraction of the pain he's caused me. I raise my fist again, ready to deliver another blow, but then something inside me shifts. The sight of him cowering in front of me, the fear in his eyes, suddenly brings me back to reality. I'm not a violent man. This isn't who I am. I release him, stepping back as I try to catch my breath. My chest heaves with exertion, and for a moment, the room spins around me. Richard slumps against the wall, breathing heavily, his eyes wide with shock. I didn't want this, I say, my voice shaking with the effort to hold back tears. I didn't want any of this. Richard doesn't respond, too stunned to speak. I take one last look at him before turning on my heel and walking out of his office, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. The anger that carried me here is fading, replaced by a crushing sense of despair. I've confronted him, but it hasn't made me feel any better. If anything, it's only made things worse. I thought I could find some sense of closure, some way to make sense of what Sarah has done. But now, as I step out into the chilly afternoon air, I realize that there's no easy fix for this. My marriage is over. And all that's left is the broken pieces of a life I thought was mine. The drive home from Chicago is a blur of emotions, rage, regret, and a profound sense of loss that gnaws at my insides. My fists are still sore from hitting Richard, but the pain is nothing compared to the hollow ache in my chest. I thought confronting him would give me some measure of satisfaction, some sense of closure. Instead, I feel more lost than ever. As I pull into the driveway, the house looms before me, its dark windows reflecting the stormy sky above. This was supposed to be our home, our sanctuary. Now, it feels like a prison, each wall closing in, suffocating me with memories of what once was. I know I have to face Sarah again, to finally end this nightmare once and for all. But I can't shake the feeling that there's something I'm missing, some piece of the puzzle that hasn't yet fallen into place. I take a deep breath and step out of the car, my heart pounding as I approach the front door. The house is eerily silent as I enter, the only sound the ticking of the clock on the wall. It's as if time itself is mocking me, counting down the moments until everything falls apart. I find Sarah in the living room, sitting on the couch with her head in her hands. She looks up as I enter, her eyes red and swollen from crying. For a moment, neither of us speaks. The silence between us is heavy, filled with all the things we've left unsaid. I went to see him, I finally say, my voice rough. She flinches, her eyes widening in fear. Mark, what did you do? I confronted him, I reply, my tone cold. I wanted him to understand the pain he's caused, the damage he's done to our marriage. But it didn't help, Sarah. Nothing helps. She looks down, her hands trembling as she fidgets with the hem of her shirt. I'm so sorry, she whispers, her voice barely audible. I never wanted this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. I shake my head, my anger flaring up again. You keep saying that, but it doesn't change anything. You made a choice, Sarah. You chose him over me. I didn't choose him, she says, her voice breaking. It was a mistake, Mark. A terrible, horrible mistake. I was weak, and I let myself get caught up in the past. But I don't love him. I never did. Then why? I demand, my voice rising. Why did you do it? Why risk everything we built together? She looks at me, her eyes filled with despair. I don't know, she admits, her voice trembling. I was confused. Seeing Richard again brought back all these memories, all these emotions I thought I'd buried. And in that moment, I wasn't thinking about us. I wasn't thinking about the consequences. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head in disbelief. So that's it? You just got swept up in the moment, and now everything we had is gone. I know you hate me, she says, tears streaming down her face. And I don't blame you. I hate myself for what I've done. But I'm begging you, Mark, please don't throw away what we have. We can get through this. We can rebuild. I stare at her, my heart heavy with the weight of her words. For a moment, I consider trying to piece together the shattered remains of our marriage. But then I remember the video, the laughter, the way she looked at Richard, and the anger surges back with a vengeance. There's no coming back from this, I say, my voice firm. You destroyed my trust, Sarah. And without trust, there's nothing left. She sobs, her shoulders shaking as she buries her face in her hands. I'm so sorry, she chokes out between sobs. I'm so sorry. I stand there, watching her break down, feeling a strange sense of detachment wash over me. This woman, this person I once loved more than anything, feels like a stranger to me now. And I realize, with a cold clarity, that there's no saving this marriage. It's over. I'm filing for divorce, I say, the words cutting through the silence like a knife. She looks up at me, her eyes wide with shock. Mark, no, please, don't do this. It's already done, I reply, my tone final. I'll stay with David until the paperwork is finalized. After that, I don't ever want to see you again. She tries to stand, to come closer to me, but I step back, keeping the distance between us. Mark, please, we can work through this. We can? I said no. I snap, the anger flaring up again. It's over, Sarah. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine. The words hang in the air, and for a moment, it feels like time has stopped. She stares at me, her expression one of despair and disbelief. But there's nothing left to say, nothing left to salvage. Without another word, I turn and walk out of the house, the door slamming shut behind me. The cool evening air hits me like a slap, but it does nothing to quell the fire burning in my chest. I get into my car and drive, not caring where I'm going, only knowing that I need to get as far away from Sarah as possible. But as I drive, my thoughts keep returning to Richard, to the smug look on his face when I confronted him. The way he tried to weasel out of responsibility, to paint himself as a victim. The way he said Sarah never mentioned me. The thought gnaws at me, a small voice in the back of my mind whispering that something isn't right. Why would Sarah lie about being married? It doesn't add up. And then there's the video, how did it end up online? Who filmed it? Why would someone do that? I pull over to the side of the road, my heart pounding as the pieces start to fall into place. It all feels too orchestrated, too deliberate. Like someone wanted me to find out. Grabbing my phone, I scroll through my contacts until I find David's number. I hesitate for a moment before hitting the call button. It rings twice before he picks up. Mark? What's going on? He asks, concern evident in his voice. I need to talk to you, I say, my voice urgent. Something doesn't add up. I think there's more to this than we realized. There's a pause on the other end, and I can almost hear David's mind working. What do you mean? I mean the video, I reply, my mind racing. How did it end up online? Who filmed it? Why would they do that? I don't know, David says slowly. But now that you mention it, it does seem strange. You think someone set this up? I don't know what to think, I admit, my voice strained. But I need to find out. Can you meet me at your place? I need your help. Of course, David says, his tone serious. I'll be here. Come over as soon as you can. I hang up and start the car, my mind buzzing with possibilities. There's something we're missing, something that could change everything. And I'm not going to stop until I find out the truth. By the time I arrive at David's place, the sun has set, and the sky is dark and foreboding. David greets me at the door, his expression tense as he leads me inside. We sit in his living room, the air between us heavy with anticipation. "Tell me everything," David says, his eyes locked on mine. "What's going through your mind?" I take a deep breath and begin to explain my suspicions, laying out everything that's been bothering me. The inconsistencies in Sarah's behavior, the strange circumstances surrounding the video, the nagging feeling that something isn't right. David listens intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. When I'm finished, he leans back in his chair, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the armrest. "You might be onto something," he finally says, his voice thoughtful. "But if this was a setup, who would go to such lengths to ruin your marriage?" "And why?" "I don't know," I admit, frustration seeping into my voice. "But I have to find out. I can't move on until I know the truth." David nods, his expression determined. "All right. Let's start by digging into Richard's background. If someone wanted to use him to get to you, there might be something in his past that could give us a clue." We spend the next few hours researching Richard Jacobs, scouring the internet for any information that might shed light on his connection to Sarah. At first, nothing stands out, just the usual business accolades and social media posts. But then, we find something that makes my blood run cold. An old article from a local newspaper, buried deep in the archives, detailing a scandal involving Richard and his business partner. The partner, a man named Andrew Lewis, had been caught embezzling funds from their company. The fallout was severe. Andrew was arrested and sent to prison, while Richard managed to distance himself from the scandal, coming out unscathed. But what catches my attention is the name of Andrew Lewis's wife, Christine Lewis. A name that sounds eerily familiar. I quickly search through my own memories, trying to place it. When it hits me, Christine Lewis was Sarah's best friend in college. They were inseparable back then, but they had a falling out after graduation, and I hadn't heard Sarah mention her in years. The realization sends a chill down my spine. Could Christine have orchestrated this whole thing as revenge for what happened to her husband? Could she have manipulated Sarah, set her up to cheat, and then exposed it to destroy our marriage? It all fits too perfectly. The pieces of the puzzle finally fall into place, and the full extent of the betrayal hits me like a ton of bricks. "She set this up," I whisper, my voice filled with horror. "Christine set this up to get back at me through Sarah. She used Richard to lure her in, and then she made sure I found out." David's expression darkens as he processes the information. "That's twisted. But it makes sense. If she blames you for what happened to her husband, this would be the perfect way to destroy your life." I feel sick to my stomach, the weight of the deception crashing down on me. "Sarah never stood a chance," I say, my voice hollow. "She was just a pawn in Christine's game." David looks at me with a mixture of sympathy and resolve. "What are you going to do?" I take a deep breath, the rage boiling inside me, but this time, it's directed at Christine. I'm going to confront her. I need to hear it from her own mouth. She's not going to get away with this. David nods. "Do you want me to come with you?" "No," I say, shaking my head. "This is something I have to do on my own." With that, I stand up, my mind made up. I'm going to find Christine, and I'm going to make her pay for what she's done. The drive to Christine's house feels surreal, the streetlights casting long shadows on the pavement as I navigate the quiet suburban streets. When I finally arrive, I sit in the car for a moment, gathering my thoughts, before stepping out and making my way to the front door. I ring the doorbell, my heart pounding in my chest. After a moment, the door swings open, and Christine stands there, a look of surprise quickly replaced by one of cold calculation. "Mark," she says, her voice dripping with feigned concern. "What a surprise. What brings you here?" "Cut the act," I snap, my voice filled with venom. "I know what you did, Christine. I know you set this up. All of it." She raises an eyebrow, her expression unreadable. I have no idea what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, I growl, taking a step closer. You used Richard to seduce Sarah. You manipulated her, and then you made sure I found out. This was all part of your sick plan to get revenge for what happened to Andrew. Christine's eyes narrow, and for a moment, I see the mask slip. The cold, calculating expression beneath it sends a shiver down my spine. So what if I did, she says, her voice icy. Andrew's life was ruined because of you. You think I was going to let that go? I had nothing to do with what happened to him, I retort, my voice rising. That was all Richard. You're blaming the wrong person. Christine laughs, the sound devoid of any warmth. You're just as guilty, Mark. You were part of that world, part of the reason why Andrew lost everything. You don't get to walk away unscathed. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut, and I realize with sickening clarity that there's no reasoning with her. She's consumed by her hatred, blinded by her need for revenge. Nothing I say will change that. Sarah didn't deserve this, I say, my voice filled with bitterness. You used her to get to me, and now her life is destroyed because of you. Christine's expression softens for a moment, but it quickly hardens again. She made her choices, just like you made yours. We all have to live with the consequences. I stare at her, a mixture of anger and disgust boiling inside me. I hope you're happy with what you've done. Because all you've accomplished is making sure I never forget how much I hate you. With that, I turn and walk away, leaving Christine standing in the doorway. My hands tremble as I get into my car, the weight of the night's revelations pressing down on me. But as I drive away, I feel a strange sense of closure. The truth is out, and there's no going back. My marriage is over, my life as I knew it shattered beyond repair. When I return to David's place, he's waiting for me, his expression filled with concern. How did it go? It's over, I say simply, my voice flat. Christine admitted to everything. She did it to get back at me for what happened to Andrew. David shakes his head in disbelief. That's messed up, man. I'm sorry. I nod, but the words feel hollow. There's nothing left to say, nothing that can fix what's been broken. I'm done, I say quietly. I'm done with all of it. David places a hand on my shoulder, offering silent support. Whatever you need, Mark. I'm here for you. Thanks, I reply, grateful for his friendship, but knowing that this is something I have to deal with on my own. In the days that follow, I finalize the divorce with Sarah. We don't speak much, the distance between us growing wider with each passing day. There's no more anger, no more tears, just a quiet resignation that this is the end. When the paperwork is signed, and the last loose ends are tied up, I pack my bags and leave town. I don't know where I'm going, but I know I need to start over, to rebuild my life away from the ghosts of the past. As I drive away, I don't look back. The road stretches out before me, an uncertain future filled with unknown possibilities. But one thing is certain, I'm free. Free from the lies, the betrayal, the pain. And as I leave my old life behind, I vow never to let anyone hurt me like that again. Sarah and I will never cross paths again. We're both too damaged, too broken by what's happened. The love we once shared has been consumed by the hatred born from betrayal, and there's no coming back from that. In the end, the deception is revealed, and the truth has set me free. But it's a freedom born from loss, from the ashes of a life that can never be rebuilt. And as I drive into the unknown, I know that this is the price of truth, a price I'm willing to pay to leave the past behind and start anew.